apple blossoms. We've been talking about the structure and function of flowers for the last couple of days. You've had an opportunity to look up close at flowers, the function of petals, in other words, their purpose for their structure. We know that those petals serve as a beacon for pollinators to come from far away and find that flower and access pollen to bring back to their hives. And in the process, travel to many different flowers and get pollen stuck all over them. And that pollen sticks to the stigma in the center of the blossom and travels down through the pistil and into the ovaries and helps to reproduce. Helps to produce a fruit, right? One of these. Now, this one didn't actually come from this tree. This is just a crabapple tree. This one didn't come from any of my trees because it's not that time of year yet. This apple probably came from Japan or New Zealand. This time of year, apples are hard to come by in North America. So we import them from really far away where they tend to be ripe during different times of the year. And then we put them in cold storage as they travel from one place all the way across the world to another to end up in my fruit bowl. However, while I really enjoy a good crisp apple from New Zealand or Japan, there's nothing better in my mind than an heirloom apple from my backyard or an orchard nearby anyway. So I've mentioned once before about this tree, once or twice. I've talked about the apples in this tree. This is the first tree that I planted here just about 9 years ago. And it's grown up and it's very healthy and it produced a ton of blossoms this spring. So I'm really looking forward to new apples. There's one right there. And they're all over this tree. And what's interesting is this tree, being 9 years old, has actually produced fruit before. This is the only tree in my orchard that has produced a fair amount of fruit on its branches. Last year, at one point, it had probably 60 or 70 apples on it during the summertime. Many of those dropped during the summer, probably not enough moisture. And around the time they were ripening, there were about 20 left on the tree. If we stand back and see, it's a pretty good sized tree these days. By the time we wanted to pick them, they were all gone. They disappeared. They weren't on the ground. You can tell when apples drop because you see them below the tree. They're on the ground, but they were gone. And we knew what had happened because we'd been watching from afar. We'd been watching squirrels take apples out of the tree one by one. And then one day, when they were perfectly ripe from the squirrel's perspective, they attacked and the apples were gone. So I got really frustrated when that happens because I think of these as my apples. I planted that tree. I want those apples. I want to enjoy those apples, fresh apples from my own orchard. But the squirrels taking those apples is exactly as nature intended. So we think of these apples. So imagine an apple hanging from this tree, right? There's an apple and it looks really good. We think of that apple as a protector of seeds because we know that deep inside that apple are seeds. And maybe those seeds wouldn't survive if it wasn't for the fruit that was protecting it. But that's not the purpose for this apple, to protect its seeds. It's not its primary purpose anyway. It's not a major reason that this fruit exists. This fruit exists to attract squirrels and other creatures to take this fruit off the tree and haul it around somewhere far away where it will eat the apple and poop out its seeds on the ground so a new tree can grow. That's the purpose of a fruit. It's called dispersal, seed dispersal. In fact, dispersal is a term used for all wildlife. At some point, everything has to move in one manner or another, whether it's seeds, fruit, adolescents, juveniles that leave home early. You all someday will probably leave home and go somewhere that you think is interesting and valuable to you. That's called dispersal. It sounds strange, but it's true. It's dispersal. You're going off in the world to do your thing. Because what good would you do just sitting in one place all the time? Which kind of begs the question. You know, this past few months has been really frustrating, and it feels like, ooh, what good are we doing sitting by ourselves? But we know we have reasons to be by ourselves now. Eventually, we are going to be desperate to get out when it's safe to do so. And travel, and go around and do all the good things that we do in the world. That's what dispersal is all about. That's why fruit exists. Not necessarily just to nourish us and to make us happy because they taste good, but to allow that seed to travel far away and almost literally get planted by animals. When they poop out those seeds in the ground, that's becoming fertilizer and helps the seeds to grow and produce new trees, such as these. These are apple trees. They're wild apple trees. They would probably produce, if they ever produce any fruit at all, some kind of berry-sized apple. They might not even produce at all. It's possible that these trees could grow up and produce a nice big fat, yummy, edible apple like this, but not likely. Most wild apple trees do not produce large, tasty fruit. Most of them produce different size fruits or no fruits at all. And those fruits are not necessarily designed for something like squirrels. They might be designed for birds. And when I say designed, that's kind of a funny word, but crab apple trees, like the big one that I started and showed you those blossoms, that's going to produce little berry-sized apples, and those get dispersed by birds, not squirrels. So dispersal, super important. Now, all this process has to happen somehow. Trees need energy to produce blossoms. They need energy to produce fruit. They need water, they need nutrients, but most of all, they need energy, and that's where they get it, right there. And this is how they get it, right here. That's the tree's solar panel, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Photosynthesis. It's your last major part of the science journal assignment, and we're going to do a sketch note. I'm going to give you a couple days to do it on photosynthesis. So have a great day and enjoy learning about photosynthesis and creating your own unique, beautiful sketch note. All right, we'll see you at Hangouts.